I need to tell you something that made my blood run cold when I saw it yesterday. 20 Republicans, including some who were considered Trump loyalists, just crossed the aisle to join Democrats on a health care vote that could destroy Speaker Johnson's already fragile leadership. But here's what the mainstream media isn't telling you about this unprecedented revolt. This isn't just about health care. This is about the complete breakdown of institutional authority within the Republican Party. In my 27 years analyzing power structures and institutional collapse at CIA, I learned to recognize the warning signs when organizations begin to fracture from within. What happened yesterday in Congress wasn't just a policy disagreement. It was a systematic rebellion that exposes something far more dangerous. The Republican Party has lost the ability to govern its own members. Let me explain why this matters beyond just healthcare policy, because what we're witnessing is the real-time collapse of party discipline that has kept American democracy stable for over 2 centuries. When elected representatives openly defy their party leadership on core issues, when institutional loyalty breaks down, when personal political survival trumps collective governance, you're not just seeing political disagreement, you're seeing the preconditions for institutional collapse. Yesterday's healthcare vote was supposed to be routine party line politics. Republicans oppose expanding government healthcare programs. Democrats support them. Simple, predictable, stable. But instead, 20 Republicans broke ranks to support a Democratic discharge petition extending ACA subsidies for 3 years. 20 legislators who essentially said to their own party leadership, "We don't trust you to handle this. We're going around you entirely." But here's what makes this particularly explosive from an intelligence analysis perspective. Several of these 20 defectors were previously considered solid Trump allies, representatives who built their careers on loyalty to the MAGA movement. When Trump loyalists start abandoning party discipline, it signals something profound about the shift in political power dynamics. Think about what this means psychologically. These representatives looked at their own leadership, looked at Speaker Mike Johnson's strategy on healthcare, and decided their political survival required betraying party unity. That's not principled opposition. That's survival instinct overriding institutional loyalty. And when survival instinct takes over in political institutions, chaos follows. Let me break down exactly what happened, because the details matter for understanding why this represents an institutional earthquake. The issue was ACA premium subsidies that were set to expire, causing massive premium increases for millions of Americans. Democrats proposed a clean 3-year extension through a discharge petition, bypassing normal committee processes and leadership control. Under normal circumstances, Republican leadership would whip the votes, maintain party discipline, and either negotiate a compromise or allow Democrats to take the political blame for any negative consequences. But that's not what happened. Instead, 20 Republicans essentially told Speaker Johnson that they trusted Democratic leadership more than their own party's strategy. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries played this perfectly. And this is where my intelligence background becomes crucial for understanding what actually occurred. Jeffries didn't just propose legislation, he executed a sophisticated political operation designed to exploit Republican institutional weakness. First, he created a clean bill that was difficult to oppose on policy grounds. A simple 3-year extension with no controversial add-ons, no partisan poison pills, nothing that would give moderate Republicans cover to vote against it. Then he gathered 214 Democratic signatures, demonstrating unified party discipline while highlighting Republican division. Most importantly, he waited. He didn't rush to compromise or negotiate with Republican moderates. He let Republican leadership struggle with their own internal contradictions while offering a simple alternative that would solve the immediate problem. It's textbook political intelligence operation. Identify your opponent's weakness, create pressure that exploits that weakness, then offer a solution that makes their weakness visible to everyone. The 20 Republicans who signed onto the Democratic discharge petition weren't just crossing the aisle on healthcare policy. They were publicly declaring that they had more faith in Democratic institutional competence than Republican leadership capability. That's a devastating indictment of Speaker Johnson's effectiveness. But here's what really troubles me about this situation and why it represents something more dangerous than normal political disagreement. When I analyze institutional breakdown, I look for patterns that indicate systemic failure rather than temporary political setbacks. Speaker Johnson has now lost control of his caucus on multiple major issues. The government shutdown, where he kept the House out for 6 weeks despite member objections. The big, beautiful bill strategy that frustrated rank-and-file Republicans who felt excluded from the process. And now healthcare, where 20 of his own members chose Democratic leadership over his guidance. That's not bad luck or difficult circumstances. That's a pattern of institutional failure that indicates fundamental problems with leadership capability and institutional authority. When a speaker consistently loses major battles with his own party members, the institution of the speakership itself begins to break down. I watched this same pattern during the final years of Soviet institutional control. Party leadership would announce policies, local officials would nod in agreement publicly, then systematically undermine those policies through individual survival calculations. The institutional authority that held the system together simply evaporated as individual actors prioritized personal survival over collective stability. What makes the Republican situation particularly dangerous is that this breakdown is happening during a period when they actually control the House. They're not a minority party struggling with opposition governance. They have institutional power, and they're still unable to maintain basic party discipline. That suggests problems that go far deeper than tactical disagreements. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, one of the moderates involved in the healthcare revolt, inadvertently revealed the deeper institutional crisis when he talked about Republicans getting in deeper and deeper trouble all the time. That's not someone criticizing specific policies. That's someone who has lost faith in his party's ability to govern effectively. The healthcare issue itself exposes another layer of institutional dysfunction that should alarm anyone who cares about effective governance. For over a decade, Republicans have promised to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act with something better, but they've never developed a viable alternative that addresses the core affordability and access problems that concern most Americans. So when premium subsidies were set to expire, causing massive cost increases for millions of people, Republican leadership had no credible plan to address the crisis. They could offer ideological opposition to government health care programs, but they couldn't offer practical solutions that would prevent constituent harm. That's not governance. That's institutional paralysis disguised as principle. The 20 Republicans who broke ranks understood this perfectly. They represent districts where premium increases would cause real political and human damage. They looked at their leadership strategy of opposition without alternatives and made a rational calculation that Democratic solutions were preferable to Republican inaction. But here's where this gets really dangerous for the broader health of American democracy. When party institutions lose the ability to provide leadership, individual members start making survival calculations that prioritize short-term political safety over long-term institutional stability. Each of these 20 Republicans probably made rational individual choices. Vote with Democrats to protect constituents from premium increases, demonstrate independence from unpopular party leadership, position themselves as pragmatic problem solvers for future electoral campaigns. Individually rational, collectively disastrous for institutional governance. Speaker Johnson's response revealed just how powerless he's become. When asked directly if he had lost control of the House, his answer was essentially an admission of institutional failure disguised as explanation. He cited the smallest majority in U.S. history and claimed these are not normal times. But having a narrow majority doesn't excuse losing 20 members on a core party issue. Nancy Pelosi managed to pass major legislation with similarly narrow margins because she maintained institutional authority and party discipline. The problem isn't the margin, it's the leadership's inability to effectively use the power they have. The comparison to Pelosi is particularly revealing because it highlights what effective institutional leadership looks like even under difficult circumstances. Pelosi didn't maintain party unity by being universally loved. She maintained it by demonstrating competence, building trust through effective communication, and consistently delivering results that serve both individual member interests and collective party goals. Johnson, by contrast, has consistently failed to deliver results while simultaneously alienating members through poor communication and strategic failures. The government shutdown that he orchestrated was widely viewed as unnecessary and damaging. His legislative strategy has been reactive and inconsistent. Most importantly, he's repeatedly put members in politically vulnerable positions without providing them with effective tools to defend their votes to constituents. What's particularly troubling from an institutional analysis perspective is how quickly this breakdown has accelerated. Johnson has been Speaker for barely a year, but he's already facing active discussions about potential leadership challenges. Representative Elise Stefanik publicly stated that if a vote were held today, Johnson would no longer be Speaker. That's not just criticism, that's institutional rebellion. When senior party members start publicly questioning a leader's viability, it creates a self-reinforcing cycle of declining authority. Members start making independent calculations based on expectations of leadership change rather than loyalty to current leadership. The healthcare revolt represents the culmination of this institutional breakdown. 20 members essentially declared that they no longer trust their leadership to handle major policy challenges effectively. They've decided that their political survival requires going around their own party institutions rather than working within them. But here's what really keeps me awake about this situation. The breakdown we're witnessing in Republican Party discipline is happening at exactly the moment when American democracy faces serious challenges that require effective institutional governance. Whether it's healthcare, immigration, fiscal policy, or foreign relations, the complex challenges facing the country require legislative institutions capable of developing and implementing coherent policies. When one of the two major parties loses the ability to govern its own members, it creates systemic vulnerability that affects the entire democratic system. Legislation becomes unpredictable, coalition building becomes impossible, and policy outcomes become dependent on individual member calculations rather than institutional processes. The Democrats are clearly benefiting from Republican institutional dysfunction in the short term. The healthcare discharge petition succeeded because they maintained party unity while Republicans fragmented. But long-term Democratic stability requires both parties to maintain basic institutional competence. When institutional authority breaks down, it doesn't just affect the party experiencing the crisis. It changes the entire dynamic of democratic governance, creating incentives for more extreme behavior, reducing the possibility of bipartisan cooperation, and making it harder to address complex challenges that require sustained institutional commitment. Looking ahead, I see several possible scenarios, none of them particularly encouraging for institutional stability. Johnson could attempt to restore authority through more aggressive leadership tactics, but that risks further alienating members who are already questioning his competence. He could try to accommodate the rebels through more inclusive processes, but that signals weakness and invites more challenges to his authority. Alternatively, Republicans could replace Johnson with someone who can restore party discipline, but leadership changes during active governance periods typically create more instability rather than less. or they could accept permanent fragmentation, essentially acknowledging that they're unable to function as a coherent institutional party. From my perspective, analyzing institutional failure over 3 decades, the most likely outcome is continued breakdown until external pressure forces some kind of resolution. Either electoral consequences that clarify political incentives, or crisis situations that require institutional cooperation regardless of internal party dynamics. The healthcare revolt isn't just about ACA subsidies or Speaker Johnson's political future. It's about whether American democracy can maintain the institutional stability necessary for effective governance. When party discipline breaks down, when institutional authority erodes, when individual survival calculations trump collective responsibility, you're not just seeing political disagreement. You're seeing the warning signs of democratic institutional failure. And unless Republican leadership can restore basic party discipline and demonstrate effective governance capability, these 20 defectors won't be the last to conclude that their political survival requires abandoning institutional loyalty. That's not just bad for the Republican Party, that's dangerous for American democracy itself.